What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some highlights from yesterday's Xbox Developer Direct for 2025, where they let the developers directly tell you about the projects they are working on. In this case, 4 different titles, 3 of which came with release dates and pricing even, many of which I actually plan to review, so this was a great showcase for me in terms of planning ahead, as a lot of them are releasing in April or May, so really not much longer to wait for some of these. Overall, I thought it was a pretty cool showcase, so let's go ahead and dive straight into it. So first up, we have the announcement of Ninja Gaiden 4, which should be releasing sometime in fall of this year, though no specific date on this one. And just like its predecessors, it's looking to be a hardcore action experience, while at the same time, of course, being an evolution of its previous games. Now this one is going to take place in Tokyo, which is dealing with the fallout of the last game, namely a cursed rain, causing no shortage of problems, such as fiends and even a little bit the Divine Dragon Order, which is supposed to be keeping guard over the city, but is obviously at odds with the ninja clans. And speaking of the ninja clans, we won't just be playing Ryu this time around. We'll actually be playing a ninja from the rival Raven clan, known as, I believe it is Yakumo, who is meant to represent a new generation of ninja. This comes with its own fighting styles to make him separate from Ryu, though it's my understanding that Ryu will also be playable as well. Besides just that information, they gave some details about the various places you'll be able to explore, some of the art direction, things like that. And overall, I thought this game looked really cool. I like a good action title, and Ninja Gaiden is of course a huge franchise in terms of its hardcore audience, that is. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Team Ninja can do with this one. Now, believe it or not, that's not the only news they had. At the exact same time, they sort of shadow dropped a remake of Ninja Gaiden 2, allowing people to fully explore that one while they wait for the new one. This is called Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, and it's meant to be the sort of definitive way to play that game. It even comes with some extra difficulty modes, that kind of thing, to help people get into the spirit of what these games are all about. But then we have our second entry, South of Midnight. This is an upcoming action adventure from Compulsion Games that I am personally very interested in because it is set in the deep south of America, which just so happens to be where I live. So I really want to see what they can do with the sort of iconography and the Southern Gothic style that they're aiming for, and frankly how well that's represented in game. That is of interest to me because I live there. But this game will be coming out on April 8th, and it will be selling for $40, which I mentioned specifically because I'm glad to see they weren't trying to push a full price with this game. I think $40 is much more reasonable for a game like this, and I think it probably would have struggled at a full AAA price point, though I do believe all of these games are coming to Game Pass if that helps you out. Now, another thing right away to mention about this game, you can probably see it just in some of the footage here, but much of the graphical style is inspired by things like stop motion, which is why all of the animations and things look a little, let's say, low frame rate. That's intentional. It's meant to mimic stop motion. I don't know how well that's going to be received by people. It's not the kind of thing that bothers me terribly as long as it's accompanied with, a full idea of what their art direction is, but I could see it bothering some people for sure. But nonetheless, South of Midnight follows the tale of Hazel, a young woman who comes into the power of weaving. Weaving is the art of messing with the grand tapestry, as they call it, which is something that people who are chosen by the planet itself can do. Basically, the world, nature, etc. chose Hazel to be its guardian and perform all sorts of nature magic, which involves untangling the threads that bind the world together via the grand tapestry. And we're going to utilize this, and the weaving as it's called, to heal various wounds in the land, which is going to see us encountering all sorts of large boss enemies across a few different zones as Hazel searches for her mother. This game looks decently fun. I don't think it'll blow me away, to be honest. Most of my interest is simply in the setting, but we'll see what happens with it for sure. Next up, we've got Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This was announced for April 24th, coming in at $50, also a little below full price, and it is heavily inspired by various JRPGs, and we got a little more information about it, which has been a little sparse, but basically, Clair Obscur here takes place in a world where every year the painter or the paintress paints a new number on this very public space, and every person of that age or higher just dies, in the sense that they sort of just disappear, but I think death is basically the way to look at it. And every year an expedition goes on to see if they can't, do something about this, and so far it has been unsuccessful. But that's where our expedition comes in, a whole host of characters for their own reasons of being there, trying to travel and get to the bottom of what this is all about, with various reasons bringing them together in, again, a sort of JRPG fashion. Now, we also got some new details here, specifically in regards to some playable characters, such as a character named Monako, who is a shapeshifter of a race known as Gestrels, a sort of loud, obnoxious bunch, with nonetheless very unique powers. They also showed off what will effectively act as your mount, a giant sort of inflatable balloon type character, who just so happens to be the strongest thing in the planet, canonically. But I did mention a world map there. They did want to show that off. This game will have a proper world map in addition to its explorable areas, which is a common enough thing for JRPGs. So all of that stuff was pretty cool to see. From there, they went on to explain some of the things like skills and passives and how you'll be able to build each individual character with things like Lumina in order to potentially make some really interesting ways to engage with the mostly turn-based combat that encompasses more active elements like, blocking or guarding, triggering extra effects via some mechanics to keep you a little more engaged. Overall, this game's looking great. I love the art style. They're going for a sort of surrealism, and I'm definitely into it. Was happy to see more of this game, and especially now that we have a release date. But then at the end, we of course have the big show stealer, Doom: The Dark Ages. This was announced for May 14th, and unsurprisingly, given the franchise, it will in fact be selling for the full $70 everybody likes to charge these days. But I will say that The Dark Ages here is looking incredible, and naturally a little bit different from its modern counterparts, but The Dark Ages will be a prequel to Doom 2016 and features what they referred to as a medieval sci-fi setting. And while it will retain some of the fast-paced action that you would expect from Doom, it's important to understand that their core pillar when it comes to combat is stand and fight, whereas Doom 2016 was run and gun, and Doom Eternal was jump and shoot. So here in The Dark Ages, we have a lot of melee options. They mentioned a melee combo system to go along with your shield saw to give you the tools to actually get up close and personal to fight these enemies, in addition to all the usual bevy of various guns at your disposal. They showed off using things like the flail, a gauntlet, or a mace in order to get involved in some melee combo system while you're also tearing enemies to shreds via your various weapons. More than anything, I would say that the combat in this one just looks very visceral and in your face, but at the same time, honestly, a little less manic than the other ones, which I think will probably work out for them. But I've been enjoying stuff like this basically as a break from all the RPGs that I play, as sometimes it's fun to just shoot stuff, which is what I'm hoping Doom: The Dark Ages manages to be for me. And again, every time I see this game, it looks better and better, and this was no exception, but now we even have a release date for it. Very excited to see what they do with this one. But with that, that's basically everything that was announced or mentioned at the Developer Direct. Again, a lot of titles very relevant to myself, so a pretty good showcase for me, but I imagine if you're not interested in these 4 games, it didn't do much for you. Though I will say I was especially happy to see some of like April and May getting fleshed out, as basically every release date we had so far was for the very early part of the year, and I was interested in what was going on later. So at the very least, that was nice to see one way or the other. But that is pretty much going to do it for this particular video. Certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.